Hi, folks. This is Mark Smith with Family Tree Life Coaching. And this is the Angie and Mark show, focusing on over functioning generally as a rule. Angie, how are you today?
I am doing pretty well. Spring has sprung in Tennessee, so how are you doing?
The sun is out, but the weather, the temperature hasn't sprung towards spring yet. So we have a guest, which is the first time in the history of our show that we've had a guest. We have Germana Rovinelli with us, and she is somebody who I've known for a long time and who has really solid recovery.
Mhm.
She's written a book that we're going to discuss in a bit. Can you just say the title of the book and give a 20-second synopsis, and we'll come back to it later. Tell us about the book.
The book is called We Do Recover from Trauma, Abandonment, Neglect, and Abuse. And it's a synopsis of generational trauma passed on to me, how that impacted me as a child, how that impacted me as a parent, and how I was fortunate enough through recovery to break the cycles of that trauma and addiction. And I was inspired to write that book by Mark Smith.
How about that?
Yeah.
Cool. This light on my face isn't the sun. It's sort of an angelic thing that's going on. I've never been accused of being angelic. So, well, I'm glad that I inspired you to write the book. I wanted to introduce Germana by she's a life coach in so many different areas in life. That's the cool thing about life coaching is you can coach somebody in anything that you have expertise in. And Germana, as we'll find out, has expertise in a lot of different areas. After I introduce Germana, then we're going to get into a discussion of overfunctioning and hear from Germana and hear from Angie mainly about various topics that I don't think we've covered much in our previous shows. So in her introduction, Germana says, "I'm just like you." That's a good place to start. People want to know that people they watch on videos aren't up here and we have all the answers. We're just normal people with our own recovery struggles. You, like me, want the most out of life, and of course, we all have our fair share of life's trials and tribulations. Mine, she wrote, included a challenging childhood, an eating disorder, an addiction, being a single mother on welfare, living with chronic back pain, being challenged with low self-esteem and lack of confidence that resulted in feelings of self-loathing and pain. You had a lot of stuff to contend with, didn't you?
Yeah, I got my fair share.
But she says, if I can turn my life around, so can you. Thankfully, I was gifted with people who gave me support and permission to believe in myself. They gave me the courage to strive to be more than mediocre. I think of these people as earthbound angels. Maybe I am an angel. I'm not saying I was the main one of those. I think I was maybe one tiny part of that, but I have found great satisfaction in helping others be the best that they can be. I've devoted my life to becoming an expert in the field of health and wellness to focus on the mind and the body, health, and fitness. Imagine achieving your personal best. What would that look like? How would you feel in your new body? Notice how this is different from where you're living now. Now that you've decided to move forward with your personal best, start to say yes to yourself and reach out to Germana, yours in health, Germana. And then there's this wonderful quote by Madame Curie, life is not easy for any of us, but what of that? We must have perseverance and, above all, confidence in ourselves. We must believe that we are gifted for something and that this thing must be attained. So that sort of fits with some of your achievements. I've got, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Over 23 or 24 different credentials for Germana. So I'm gonna hit some of them because she's got so many. We'd be here for 10 minutes just going through them. One was that I thought was cute. I saw a picture of her in the Bruce Lee training camp. So briefly, you didn't actually take this course from Bruce Lee, did you? But what was the story behind that?
I was privileged when I was quite a lot younger. I was trained extensively with a man named Han Lee. And he is Bruce Lee's second cousin. And he ran a beautiful Kung Fu studio in Richmond. And it was extensive. I had no idea that he was actually related to Bruce Lee until one day I opened my big mouth and said, "Hey, you look like Bruce Lee, but you've got less hair." And I was dragged down the out of the dojo and into one of the offices and shown images of him with Bruce Lee as a relative,
Nice.
as a very, and I was warned that you're never allowed to speak of this, and
Yeah.
it's dishonoring the Lee family to say anything about that. And so I was like, oh my, okay. But he was very intense.
I just got tickled by that and was curious about it. As I go through these credentials, just know that Germana is driven and that she's a champion. We just happen to pick a device that just happened to be pointed toward some trophies in her background. Are those for bodybuilding?
They were for physique. I competed as a physique athlete in my 50s, and I won overall in a number of shows locally. A couple of the trophies, I brought 5 first place trophies home, or the overall, or this or that. And I honestly, it was part of my recovery around having a really bad car accident and leaving a very toxic relationship that you had helped me get out of. And I said, so what am I going to focus on now? I'm going to focus on me. And I just put myself in, and I came home with more swag that I could carry.
There you go. There you go. Congratulations. I was in a competition for, what do you call it? Physique competition.
Yeah.
For a 60-year-old man, and I came home with the handsomest fat guy. Is what I won. Germana has credentials as a certified supervisor of personal trainers, certified as personal trainer, exercise instructor, jazzercise instructor, stability ball instructor, hatha yoga instructor, certified clinical hypnotist, practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, which is hard to say correctly. She was the Western Canadian bodybuilding champion. By the way, we should say you're from in Canada, and where in Canada are you from?
I'm on Vancouver Island, Nanaimo, BC, Vancouver Island, Canada.
Cool. Kickboxing and boxing competitor, rehabilitation trainer, trained for rehabilitation of back issues, certified nutrition therapist, and what isn't down here as a certification but is a skill is your knowledge about recovery and getting healthy, not only in the body and nutritionally, but on an emotional level, which is what your book is, more about. But with all this black belt and kickboxing and bodybuilding, it's clear that you could kick my ass if you wanted to. That's been established, I think, here with this. I don't think you'd want to, but
No, I wouldn't even go near it.
if you did, I'm pretty sure we know the outcome of that. So here's Germana from an island, in Canada, who's got all these interesting things from her background, but she's an overfunctioner. And we're here with our resident overfunctioner, Angie. And it's what she does. It's what she used to do.
Right. Well, I'm recovering, so I still tend to overfunction. But it's interesting when you were reading the introduction on the book. The one thing that stood out to me, and I think this confuses a lot of people when you're talking about an overfunctioner versus an overachiever, you had the word mediocre in there, and as an overfunctioner, I mean, in my experience, and I guess yours as well, because you're so focused on meeting everybody's needs and overfunctioning for other people, you tend to not overachieve. Has that been your experience?
Some of my overfunctioning, I think it was unconsciously driven, but what I noticed was that I deleted myself and I looked after others at my expense. And if there was anything left, then if there was anything left in my bandwidth, which usually there was not, then I would carve out something for myself.
Right.
Yeah. I think most of it for me was a survival strategy from trauma. I really do. I recognize it as not knowing where neutral is. I'm in the 5th or 6th gear. I'm going, and I've got a purpose. And I wait until the engine is toast, the oil is dirty, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out. And I think in some ways I crashed a few times and I had to go, what is going on? What's your part? And not knowing how to even give it words. Like one of my sponsors says, Germana, you have a really high pain threshold. And it's one of the saddest things to see, because
Right.
I would carry on and my body's already flagging, or my serenity is gone. I'm like so driven that I can't even tell that I've betrayed myself. That's the form of self-abandonment, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think most of my life has been in that gear, unfortunately.
I resonate with that, Angie, too, because many times I'm busy working and achieving overfunctioning, seeing client after client after client after client, while not writing books or not making as many, not having time for my bigger calling, because I'm over functioning and sort of gutting it out in the real world and becoming exhausted and not having time left over to do something that would actually be more helpful to people and more of a blessing to me. So that they don't necessarily go together. The harder you work, it doesn't necessarily always equate with measurable achievement.
Right.
Or
So,
happiness, because it never ends.
right.
It just
Right.
never ends.
Right. So Germana had sent me a list of lots of areas that she has overfunctioned or knows about overfunctioning. And I picked some that I thought were sort of intriguing. The first thing you said was overthinking things. So tell us about that.
When I'm, well, it's like for me, and I've been told that I'm very intelligent and I'm very cognitive, and sometimes that's a little overwhelming for people. But I feather through stuff and look at every possible scenario, and I stack things up as everything that could go wrong. So I prepare myself for everything that could go wrong. And then I go, okay, and if those things don't happen, then I'm safe. So I'm actually like, it's a strategy. Again, I would believe it's a trauma strategy. And it's not even, I don't think about doing it. It's just like bang, 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 bang. I'll do it to the point where I don't even know how to say it, where I'll just plan for the worst and then expect the best, or leave space for the best to come, but don't expect the best to come. So I don't get disappointed. I guess that's a way of saying
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Angie, how about you? Do you sometimes resonate with this overthinking concept?
Oh, all the time. Absolutely. Especially, it seems at night.
Mm-hmm.
I'll kind of obsess about things that don't even, get on my radar during the day. I'll over like my adult children, worrying about them, making goals for them that they haven't made for themselves. And again, like you, even when my kids were young, they would say, "Oh, I want to go to this." And I'm like, "Oh, but you could get struck by lightning because it's getting ready to storm. You're going to the pool." So always worst case scenario. I was always
Mm-hmm.
looking out for them and me, but portraying that worst case scenario, probably as a protectant, like we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a strange bird in that a lot of the time I'm busy over functioning in some areas of my life, but then in other areas where the two of you might be worrying and being vigilant and seeing the truck coming, I don't see the truck coming sometimes, and I underfunction, and I'm just whistling and walking, and the truck comes and just runs me flat over.
Mm.
Didn't see it coming, never thought about it. So there's some positives to worrying about the truck that's coming, because y'all aren't going to get run over by that truck. You might have some wear and tear, but that truck isn't going to get you. But under functioning, sometimes you get really big surprises.
Yeah.
So the second thing that I thought was interesting was that overfunctioning is a mechanism to avoid unprocessed grief and trauma. So tell us about that.
Well, I think in my experience, what I'm aware of when I look at behavior where I overfunction or have overfunctioned, it's been to escape something inside of me that I don't want to receive, or something that I don't want to even acknowledge. So, as an example, I'll find one. If I'm in pain, emotional pain, and I've deep sixed it, or I've just put it on ice, or it's sitting there frozen in me and I don't even really notice because I'm living in my head, I'm not in my body anymore, I might then look for my validation or my acceptance by working a lot, by creating a new project, by starting a new project. If I'm really lucky, I'll finish the project. I might go exercise instead of getting in touch with what's going on inside of my body. And usually what I've learned about me is if I stay still, I'll feel the feelings. They'll come. And they're like, hi, remember me? I've been here for
Yeah.
20 years. I've got a giant interest payment. Do you remember me? Let's go. And either I'm going to let myself process that however I need to, or I'm going to find a way to criticize myself for having the unappreciated pain and just start to be busy. Maybe I'll journal, maybe I'll exercise, maybe I'll write, maybe I'll take out something that needs to be done. It's all been, as I look at it from my perspective at this point in my life, I think a high percentage of my trauma had been so effectively blocked that I would have to see professionals to actually notice that there was something going on inside of me. Like, here's a funny saying. Woody Allen said this. He goes, I don't get angry. I grow a tumor instead.
Right.
Right? So
Right.
it's to pretend it's not there because it's not socially acceptable. It doesn't gain you friends if you're upset, angry, hurt, sad, scared. And so most of us are looking for acceptance or support or stability through our tribe, however we do. And most people don't like someone who's pissy or
Right.
who says, I'm sad or I'm scared. Most people go, oh, maybe you should, XYZ. And for me, I mean, most of it came up, I would get triggered, bang, all of a sudden there's a feeling, bang, there's another feeling. Even when my son was super young and I was trying to feed him in a high chair, my body reacted. And I said, what the hell is this? And I realized that I had been strangled in a high chair because I couldn't
Oh,
eat in the high chair. I couldn't feed my son. I would like freak out and start shaking, tremoring. I throw the food on the dish and I run. Meanwhile, my body's vibrating because that's trauma that I didn't know was there. But my subconscious went, chair, food, here comes the body memory. So for me, most of it was really well hidden. And I had to seek out therapists, and I did a fair amount of regressive therapy to help me and
good.
learn to do some meditations around it. But yeah, there's been a lot of shame trapped in this body, and I've worked diligently at letting that go and reclaiming myself as being precious and lovable. I needed to break the trance of, you're bad for
Right.
being
Right.
alive.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Angie, how about you? This whole notion of over functioning as avoiding unprocessed grief and trauma.
Well, growing up and in my early, married years and mothering years, I kept very busy. I didn't really know I had an issue at that point in my life. And so I was always doing a lot. It wasn't, in high school, it wasn't just, I'm in a club. I'm in like 5 clubs and I'm directing, the play at the theater and all of this. And that just continued through a bad marriage and, 5 kids. So I think I would bury it. I think I started recovering after my divorce, and slowly, very slowly. But probably the first time I really worked my way through something quickly and diligently was my 16-year-old son was in an accident and passed away.
Mm.
And I knew that I had to keep going. I still had 4 kids at home. And I felt my way through. I didn't take any medication. I just made myself really work through that through counseling and feeling and sitting and raging and whatever I needed to do, to grow through that experience. And that was really
Hmm.
a time when I started growing exponentially.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. I was sharing with someone who's put together more like we are now. She's able to access her pain, and every time we talk, something will come up for me, and I'll have some tears come up, and something comes up for her, and she has some tears come up, and we were sort of comparing ourselves in a way with another person who's like super outlandishly successful, but has the overachievement, over functioning thing as a mechanism that still works for them. I think once you get holes in your walls and depth in your heart, you can overachieve for a little bit, but then you'll get a good flushing out of tears, and you're back to unfreezing your feelings, and so we move forward, 5 steps and back 3, but it was just nice to hear that she and I both felt intimidated by this superhuman being when we're just humans. But the truth is, uh, it's more blessed and healthy to be vulnerable and human than to be superhuman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the next thought that you
Can I
had,
offer something, Mark?
yeah, absolutely.
What I've seen, and you've probably seen this as well, a lot of the people that have this persona of self-importance through overfunctioning, eventually they become ill.
Right.
And a number of people around me I've seen end up with a serious health issue like cancer, autoimmune, adrenal exhaustion, something breaks and their
Yeah.
identity that they hold on to say, no, this is who I am, disintegrates. And then there's that death. And then there's like, who gets reborn out of this? I've
Right.
seen it happen to so many people in my recovery community with double-digit recovery. They didn't look after themselves. They didn't sleep. They were thinking they were hip, slick, and cool, sleeping on 3 hours, working for 20. Look at me and my Lexus and look at me and my stuff. And it was all for image and self-importance. And I get that we all have an ego. I do too. What I saw was it costed most of these people, some of them their life. And then after the so-called therapeutic intervention, their life is ruined because there's no balance. It's just boom, I'm amazing. Well, good for you. But you still need some
Yeah.
sleep and you still need water and you need there's a point. And I think people that are prone to self-abandonment or looking for validation outside they're sitting ducks for that kind of behavior. And to me, it's a form of self-abuse, but
Right.
it's hidden. But
Right.
if you think I'm amazing, I'm amazing. So I have to
Yeah.
keep going back for that hit.
What I've noticed is a lot of times younger people, people in their 30s, early 30s, they still have their walls up and they're setting the world on fire, and talk of this thawing out of emotional trauma and feelings and cry. They're not ready to hear that, and then they have to get up into their 40s a lot of times and get run over by a few of those trucks that I was mentioning before they're ready to, be human like the rest of us. So this next one was rescuing others in order to receive acceptance or love. So
Yeah.
there's two parts of that one.
Yeah.
So what about that one?
Well, and I believe that is a trauma response from being raised by people that did not have the ability to take care of me. And I recognize that they were so emotionally unstable and volatile. And like I was always taught that I'm bad and it's all my fault. All of the things that were wrong in the world. And I'm watching my parents just unbalanced, crying, beating on each other. So then all of a sudden my default setting is I am somehow responsible for this problem. I must make this problem better. And if I do that, there's going to be some peace and I can maybe relax and be a child again. How that manifested into my life was I would take responsibility for things that are not my responsibility. I would try to fix, intervene, be the magician, pull it out of the hat. And often I could and would, even as a young person, people would go, how did you know to say that? I'm like, I don't know. It just came out. And it would be the answer for that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
How I had been set up to do that is that would equate that you would allow me to breathe easy, that would mean I could rest, that mean I was safe. And I think it's a trauma response. I've learned to be a good service provider and be paid for that. And yet I still see it in the trauma response fashion that overdone, but too much of my identity got tied to that.
Right.
Because once that's
Right.
gone, who the hell am I?
Right. 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 Angie, how about you? Rescuing others in order to receive acceptance or love?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not pulling up anything immediately that, I've not had that drive. I did as a young child had, when my mom walked out, I mentally took on the responsibility of my baby sister, which kind of then, made me the over functioner that I am and was today. But, that was kind of a not reality. Although I felt like it in my brain, I can still remember it like it was yesterday. And that kind of, drove me and my actions through my adult life.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one that I still struggle with. I'll have a day of clients where everybody brings in great material, which engages me, which makes me, in that case, extraordinarily effective. And you get done and you're just, boom, you just have that energy. But then I'll have days when I'm tired, I'm not feeling my best, and people bring in less than stellar engaging material. And I suffer through a long day of less than exciting appointments, and that in a grounded, healthy person, it doesn't impact their self-esteem.
Mhm.
They're worthy, even if they had a day where they weren't a superstar. I picked this little card up earlier that represented a message from the universe, and this is what we're talking about. Don't be this guy. This isn't real. This is what our ego wants to do. This is not vulnerability. You can do this for a little while, but you can't do it for very long because you're going to crash and burn. This next one, Angie and I are going to initially sit out on because we're just curious as to what your thoughts are. You mentioned over functioning. One of the thing is patterns of self rejection, and we were curious. Tell us about patterns of self rejection.
Well, and it's tied to if I can get you to appreciate, value, acknowledge me, then I'm looking for my value through you. That to me is the form of that's like I'm not able to say to myself, my cup is full, I'm whole and complete as I am. I need to be extra special. I need to be extra pretty or extra organized or extra together or extra intelligent or helpful in order to belong, feel accepted, be part of. And to me, the boomerang to that, where does that come from? That's a form of self-rejection. That somehow I'm not enough in my own, on my own validity and my own merit, that I need to figure out a way to convince somebody else that I have value. Now, if I know I have value, I don't need to do that.
Yeah, yeah,
So I mean, that's how I see it. The authentic self for me is a very sensitive, playful, tender, intuitive, silly, super tender young person. That's part of who I am. It's part of my authentic self. And yet I've had to learn to hide that, not even from others, but from myself. And so
yeah,
the compensation has been through the overfunctioning, if I have the ridiculous sports car or I have the ridiculous motorcycle or if I have this or this, there is somehow I'm amazing. But originally I do it for me, but then I look for the fuel as to see, what do you think? And then if
yeah,
you're intimidated or jealous, then it backfires because that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for connection, but I've done it. I've learned to do it in a very odd way, and I see it in a with more compassion. Like I have more compassion for myself than I ever did. But if I know that I'm enough, I'm not busy doing this three-ring circus silly thing to be
yeah.
loved, and it's a pseudo
Right,
love. It's not real love.
right, right. Um, did you have anything you wanted to say about that, Angie? I know you were sort of resonating with it.
Yeah, well, I just find it very interesting. I had never thought about it that way, but it does resonate a little bit with me. You know, I just bought a Ford Mustang convertible. So, but I'm thinking, I did that for me, and
Yeah.
I'm hoping, yeah, it stays that way. Uh, but also with you talking about, you're silly. And I mean, do you still find that difficult to be silly? Is it something you have to work at or what?
If I can get myself, I love the question. If I can get myself out of my overthinking, defense mechanism. What can go wrong? Is the roof going to stay on? Blah, blah, blah. If I paid the house insurance, blah, blah, blah. If I stay out of that place and I just let myself honor the innocence and, the toes and the belly button, yes. The only way, and it's like, it seems kind of odd because I feel like I will do what I can so the things are done so that I give myself room to play. And when I've done that, then I feel, and it's just, I feel like I'm compartmentalizing myself, and I guess I am. When I do that, I often give myself permission. I'm like, what do you really want? You want whipping cream and strawberries? Do you want a bubble bath? What do you need? I'm curious and play and soft. Otherwise, I'm very focused. I'm very task orientated. I'm very completion orientated. And as I stop something and complete it, instead of me going, wow, you did it, I'm like, I got 5 other things on the list in my head. So then I'm not letting myself enjoy myself. I'm actually keeping myself, I'm withholding love. I'm withholding recognition. I'm withholding joy because I'm like, you're only okay if you're achieving, which nobody can continue to do that. And as I've hit those other decades in my life, I'm like, I can't live like that anymore. So I need to find a better strategy for what's left of my life.
Right.
Yeah. I resonate with that too. Part of what makes my job fun is being in touch with that innocent child. And I come to work a lot of times not so much wanting to impress anybody, but if something tickles me, I'll just flop it out there. And it may not seem very clinically therapist-y, but it's playful. And what I've noticed with my clients is it puts them at ease. It lets them relax. It lets them have fun, and that, it helps them. But that's not why I do it. I do it because it's sort of an expression of just my own recovery process. Angie, were you going to say something? Seemed like you were ready to jump in.
No, I do. I struggle with being playful, being silly. And this has been great to hear your perspective on this, Germana. Yeah, I feel like I need to start journaling when I'm silly and make it a
Yeah.
goal.
Pay attention to the silly and encourage the silly. Here's an interesting one that just fascinated me. That overfunctioners, who we see as so, I don't know, in my mind, do-gooders, right-doers, that they can actually have a form of dishonesty in their relationships. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, because there's a hidden agenda. It's not clean. I'm extracting my self-worth or my self-esteem or my ego boost or, my narcissistic hit, because we all have different degrees of that. I mean, everyone has some degree of it. It's like a form of prostitution.
Okay, selling yourself out.
Well, not even out. I mean, it could be, maybe if it goes too far. But the dishonesty is with self first. Because there could be a level of self-importance there. And then a sense of, if I can make this difference with you, then I have value. And it's not that it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing exchange. But say if I make myself go hard for 3 days and my body is developing a headache or I'm developing a stomach ache, my body is crying and saying, Germana, could you just take a break? And I say, yeah, no, you keep going. And I get that psychic writing crop and I just keep going and have another espresso or whatever the deal is. Number one, it's self-abusive and it's a form of dishonesty with self. If my real job is to honor and love myself as sacred, the question is, am I doing that or am I being dishonest? And if however I am with me is how I'm going to be with you. So if I have that level of integrity with myself and clarity, then I can share that with you. And then that gives you permission to jump into that pond with yourself. And I think that most of us have no idea when we're doing it. We're just doing it. But you step away and you look at the movie as it plays out, it starts to, have its own theme song. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Angie, how about you? Overfunctioning leading to dishonesty in relationships.
Right. Well, yeah, because I have lists, a love to cross things off list. And maybe that's okay for a period. Like you said, I have crashed. My soul is tired. I can tell you that. But then I will kind of try to project that onto the other people in my life. And I'm like, okay, wow, I have done 25 things today. And could you not do 3? I mean, that's not my place to tell them how to live their life, but I do, tend to do that. And I have to that's how they're living life. I do get called an overfunctioner often, probably on at least a weekly basis. And, but in my mind, I have, somebody's got to do it. Right. So
Right.
I've got to, keep going and get things done.
Right.
One of the things that came to mind while you were talking was, and I've come up against this very recently, just having the boundary to say, actually, this doesn't work for me. And this works for me. And would you mind doing this for me instead of me doing it all, being resentful? That's a form of dishonesty, or keeping going when my body's like tired. And I'm like, does this next client really need to come at this time at night? Is this really the only time? Or have I overextended myself to people please? Being
Right.
dishonest in a way, and softly harming. But if that goes on too long, then eventually illness comes, and that's where illness is, the gift and in a garbage bag, because it forces the no. It forces the no. If I don't say it, my body will.
Right.
Sooner or later, or I'm going to grow
Yeah.
fangs and pea soup's going to start flying out.
Right.
Right.
Right. This is how your work with both nutrition and the body fits in with your work with the psychological part of a person. As a therapist, if I feel bad, I immediately go to, I must have an unresolved issue that I'm pushing. Maybe I just need to eat, or maybe I need a nap. But those things don't occur to me. So I thought that was an interesting one. It's like, in a way, if you're being dishonest with yourself, you're being dishonest with other people, and you may not even recognize that you're doing it. The last one we were going to touch on maybe was similar to self-rejecting patterns, that may be different, and that is self-abandonment, and how overfunctioning is an expression of abandoning oneself. What are your thoughts on that, Germana?
Well, and in the back part of my book, I actually say that, in my opinion, that's a form of addiction, because it comes back down to, if I am enough, do I need to do or overfunction or do all these things to be okay in this world, so that I think that that's going to make my life okay? And it doesn't. It can make more problems for all humans. But it comes back to, what is my heart asking for? Am I honoring my path, or am I in a role of, another mask, another mask, another mask, another mask of looking for recognition or looking for validation? Like, as I've gotten a little bit older, and another health issue or another physical issue shows up, it kind of has forced me to say, who are you looking after? Who is this for? Like, even when I was in my last show on the stage in Pittsburgh, and I'm competing against these women, and some of them are like outrageous, and they're on steroids, and I'm not on steroids, and I'm looking, and their voice is different. And one lady goes, well, when you get the right trainer. And I'm looking, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm out there, and I've spent all this money and all of these months. Like, I spent about 2 years of hard training, tons of money. And I remember thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing here? Looking for recognition and acceptance from strangers, people that I will never meet or ever know, asking them to evaluate my physique. What the hell is that? That's sick. And looking for, I was also people pleasing my trainer. I wanted him to, love me because I wasn't getting that love somewhere else. So I'm looking for it from this other person, right?
I see.
That's a form of self-abandonment, in my opinion. I mean, it's covert, but it's still there.
Right.
And I came home and I said, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'm following my spiritual work, and I'm still an athlete. No one can take that away from me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take that amount of money, and I'm going to Italy for about a month, and I'm going to eat until I can't fit in a freaking plane seat. Like, I'm good with it, right? Like, I'm going to let myself have what I want. But that was one of those aha light bulb. I'm like, who is this for? And that's one of the questions where, for me, when I ask, like, am my cup full enough to actually nourish? Am I nourished enough to nourish back from a place of, here's some love. I've got baskets of flowers. I'm sharing flowers with you versus I need you to be okay, so I have a flower.
Yeah.
One's
This is
really
good.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah. Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were just things where, the light bulb would go on, and I'm like, what the heck, man? How old are you? What are you doing? How many more years you got left? Are you kidding me?
Mhm.
And even in in the process of being curious about potentially meeting another person who has a potential love interest, I kind of asked myself, what's your motive here? What are you looking for? And I'm real clear with the individual. And so I was like, this is what I'm looking for. And if that's not where you're at, move on. This is not a drive-through burger stand for sex. I'm sort of brutal. But I will not abandon myself to make someone else okay at my expense.
Right.
Period.
Right. Any thoughts on self-abandonment in terms of overfunctioning, Angie?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a little bit different, but when I got divorced, I had 5 children. I hung on to this big house because I have 5 kids. What am I going to do? Put them in an apartment? So I had this, large house, couldn't really afford it, but I made it, struggled through, and then I finally got to the point where I could let that house go. Some of the kids were out of the house. I just had the twins, and
Wow.
but again, I moved to another smaller home, but still in their school district. So maybe not where I would go. And so now they're out of the house, and I'm at this point in my life, like, I am, I have a limited number of years left. What am I going to do? And I love this house, and I have this amazing backyard that I don't want to let go of. But also, by having to maintain this house and the house payment, I feel like I could choose an easier life where that would free me up to write the book, would free me up to help others more. And so I'm at that point in my life to make that decision. It's difficult.
That's funny that you say that, Angie. That's been my goal recently, is to make my life easier. And overfunctioners, that's rarely something that crosses their mind. Make my life easier. It's do it right, do it perfect. But that notion of really taking care of yourself and making your life easier, instead of having a trophy, the real trophy is, Germana, like you were saying, having enough nourishment that you're able to then give nourishment to other people. And that's a real trophy, a real invisible but life touching, kind of a trophy. So just 2 pieces of business left. One is speak briefly about your book, Germana, and then I've asked the overfunctioners to remind me to not screw up the turning off of the button, of the record button, so that this show actually can go out and and visit with you guys. So
So,
just a little bit about the book.
well, I'll show a picture of the book. This is what it actually looks like. It's got a picture of my face. It
Back
says
it
we,
up a little bit.
yeah,
Back
there
it
you
up.
go.
There you go.
It says we do recover. Um, the the book is really a breakdown of how my parents' generation programmed them, their trauma, and then how that got played out and how they parented or didn't parent myself and my brother, and how that set myself up to be preyed upon by the shadowy people of this world, and then to think that that was normal and that was what life was, and that I honestly didn't know how to protect myself, so I just ended up with these cycles and patterns of trauma that I continually repeated until I started to learn that I had hope and that there was an opportunity, there was another way. That, like, where I came from, I just thought that, if you were a drug addict or if you had a food addiction, my first 12-step meeting was Overeaters Anonymous. I couldn't stop eating, but I would eat while I was asleep, which is like the weirdest thing. That you were just destined to be that, and that was your lot in life, and that was it, and poor you. So I was lucky enough that I married someone who did try to murder me. It was very much like my biological father. And that woke me up to think, my God, if I pick up a drug or drink, I will find another man that will do that to me, because I think that's what I deserve.
Right.
And that put me into the recovery process. And at that time, I had no idea what I had actually endured. And it started to slowly, one layer and then another layer and another layer and another layer started to peel off that onion. And some people stood in as surrogate grandparents for me, surrogate mother, surrogate stepfather, that taught me that I was worth loving, that taught me that if I really wanted to help people, I needed to take care of myself. And my one teacher said, it's like winding up that old-fashioned clock. You got to wind it properly the night before so it works properly for the next 24 hours. And he said, if you really want to help people, you need to do that. And I said, what do I do? And he told me, you light a candle, you have meditation, you do these things so that you come to those people intact. And I think that saved me. And then some of the trauma and the pieces started to come. And then I'd married another man that was a con artist, a liar, a thief, and it just carried on.
Yeah.
And
Where can people get this book,
they can
Germana?
get this book really easily on Amazon. I'm sure it's on Amazon.ca as well as Amazon.com.
Yeah. Put it up in front so that people can see it again.
And if you
We
just plug,
do recover.
yeah, I'll read the back. It says, from despair to hope, from addiction to recovery. Recovering from trauma or emotional pain is a process. There is no hiding from grief, only feeling your way through it. The best soul awakening I've ever had came from tragedy and turmoil. This pain is serving a purpose, allowing you to shed old emotional skin. I love that. Taking you to an even deeper level of self. Find gentleness in your moments of agony. There is no rushing the healing process, but surrendering to your current experience. And this was an excerpt written by a woman that does women's retreats called,
Nice.
yeah, beautiful, really beautiful.
Cool.
And Mark had really looked at me once when I was, he did my history, and we talked, and he looked at me and he got really intense. You only know what you know, but he looked at me and goes, Germana, I've been doing this for 30 years. And I'm like backing up, and he goes, I've never heard of someone that's had so much intensity and trauma in my life. And he goes, the butcher hung himself. You need to write a book. And I was like, eh. And then he goes, and you're going to fall in love with a psychopath because that's what raised you. And I was like, eh. And about 3 years later, I show up with a psychopath going, help me. And that's what really facilitated my healing process. Like, you did save me from a cesspool of my own cognitive dissonance. I couldn't tell what was true anymore. I didn't know what was real anymore. I just felt worthless. And I would attract people that would treat me like trash. But they would come because I love and I nurture, but then they would rip the wings off the chicken, right?
Right.
It was awful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been fun. I enjoyed it. Buy Germana's book. It's raw. It'll teach you a lot of things. I think that we brought some illumination to the concept of overfunctioning, which is sort of what we do on this show. Any parting thoughts before I'm going to hit that button.
Yay.
I'm functioning at a normal level. I'm not over functioning. Angie, any parting thoughts you want to say to the folks before we finish?
Yeah, I just want to thank Germana for coming on. That was very enlightening. I really enjoyed getting to know you and your story.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you both taking the time to have this this connection. It's been good for me because sometimes I don't understand things until I talk about them.
Right.
I get that. I understand how that works. Sometimes you need to process it before it process it by talking about it before it really makes sense to you, and it can turn around and help other people too.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you both, and I'm gonna hit the stop record button now.
Awesome.
So it's
right.
nice when an underfunctioner can actually function.
Nice.
So God bless everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.